My name is Ed Nardi, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I am calling this public meeting to order at 7 p.m. Tonight's NRC meeting will be a hybrid in-person and Zoom meeting. We have a microphone set up on the commission table, and plans will be projected through the TV monitor. If you are presenting via Zoom, please turn on your audio and microphone when it is time for you to speak. Following the presentation by the petitioner and questions from the commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. Please identify yourself with name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9 and use *6 to unmute. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of any commissioners attending virtually and the current petitioner. Once the commission has acted on an application, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. In the event of any technical difficulties, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued to the January 17th meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Gary?
Gary Kleiman.
Nick?
Nick Pappas.
And Sarah?
Sarah Grimwood.
Thank you, guys. All right, we'll jump into the agenda. The first piece is a public comment period of 10 minutes. It's limited to items that are not on the agenda, and each speaker would have 2 minutes to express their comment. Do we have any public comment this evening for this item? Don't see anyone in the audience. Delia, anybody on Zoom? All right. We'll move to approval of meeting minutes. Thank you, Karen. We had 3 this month, so that's great. We'll be all caught up. October 11th, 2023, November 1, 2023, and November 15th of 2023. And I'll just start. I just had a few minor typo comments for the November 15th minutes, but the other 2 look great to me. Thank you.
Nick had some changes on the October 11th as far as just kind of typo spacing. I think that time.
Okay, so we got Nick's comments. Sarah, Gary, any comments from you?
No, nothing
Okay, They
substantive.
look fine.
Okay. All right, if I could have a motion for those 3 meeting minute sets, please.
So
Gary, you want to do that?
I move that we accept the minutes of October 11, November, sorry, what was the second one? And then November 15.
No, yeah, November, October 11, November 1, and the 15th of November as well.
Yes, all 3 sets of minutes with minor typographical errors corrected.
Second.
Thank you, Sarah, and we'll take the vote. Gary,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. All right. Moving on to commissioner comments. Any from Sarah, Gary, Nick?
No.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Delia, director's update.
The only thing that I have for the commission is, we have been working with the Consensus Building Institute to obtain a scope and fee for them to assist with facilitating the Warner's Pond Task Force. We do have a scope and fee. We'll be preparing a contract for them to review and for finance to review, and the intent of getting them on board in early to mid-January.
Great. Scheduling is good. Doesn't seem to be a problem with them as well.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, that should dovetail nicely. Hopefully with the, seating of the task force sometime in January.
Yes.
All right. With that, I think we have 1 continuance this evening without discussion. Nick, could I have a motion for that 1 continuance for 154 Southfield?
Just a second while I find it. Hold on. Okay, I move that we continue without discussion to January 17th. Notice of intent, Labadini, 154 Southfield Road, DEP file number 1371641.
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll take the vote. Gary,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I am an I as well. All right, so tonight we'll start with our first continuance of the evening. That's
We actually have that listed for 7:10 start time, so We're at
That-
7:05.
So let's move to, what would you like to do? Extension request or admin approvals?
We can do administrative approvals.
Great.
So there are two, and let me just. Well, the first one. This is 106 Alden Road. There is a poplar that has fallen on a shed and two badly damaged crab apples, and the poplar is proposed to be fully removed. And the crabs will be heavily pruned, but with, a 5 to 10 foot snag left. Work will be done from a crane on the driveway. And you can see the wetlands is here. And they are in the outer buffer zone. And the second one is at that is 38 Black Duck. The second one,
And on that one, Julie, it looks like it's heavily wooded, no replacement
No
trees. It looks
replacements.
like it's pretty,
it is pretty wooded.
Okay.
So we did not feel like there was a need for replacements in that location.
okay.
And the same is true with the second one, which is at 106 Alden. And that's not it. That's not it either, sorry.
You're really similar.
All right, let me see if I can get that back. So I think I might have closed it by mistake. There are 5 trees
Mhm.
at 106 Alden. And they're all in the outer buffer zone proposed for removal. They all do pose a danger to the house.
Mhm.
Again, heavily wooded and not something that staff felt warranted any replacement. And those would be fully removed. No
Flush
stump
cut.
grinding, just flush cut.
What are they, white pine or?
There are 2 white pine, 2 oak, sorry, 2 white pine, an oak, and 2 small beech.
Okay. Gary, Nick, Sarah, are you good with the,
Yeah, all looks fine.
okay,
Yeah, fine by me.
Yep, good.
okay. Great. I think we're good with the administrative approvals.
Okay.
See
We
you.
could jump to certificates of compliance. There are 2 minutes left before the 7:10 start time for the continuance. So 675 Sudbury Road, that is a partial for construction, house construction at 709. Sudbury Heritage Pool and Racket Club was for tennis courts, construction and pavilion. And then the Concord Public Schools, they reconstructed a walkway
Ah,
on their property at Ripley. And those have all been visited by staff and they are in compliance with the orders of conditions. Sites are stable and we recommend those are ready for issuance.
in the partial for 709, that's what's left to be done on that.
It's for the second house. So
Okay.
it was tied to both parcels,
I get you. So this is the
This is
the
the-
back, the back half
Right.
of the approval?
right?
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you speak a little louder? It's very hard to hear, Bertie.
Yes, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for saying that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will do so.
Want me to move? I move
Yeah.
that we issue certificates of compliance for 675 Sudbury Road, DEP file number 137389. For 155 Old Bedford Road, DEP file number 1371077. And for 120 Merriam Road, DEP file number 1371619.
I would second, but I just want to clarify, the first one is a partial, right?
Yes,
Correct.
So I
Partial.
second,
All right, and we'll take the vote. Gary,
aye.
aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. All right, so COCs are done and we'll go back to the 710 application. So notice of intent, Cross Point Associates, 768 Elm Street, DPO file 137-1650. And who's with us this evening?
Carrie,
Brian
go ahead.
Butler, Oxbow, and Kerry McCormick from Crosspoint are here for the applicant.
All right, I think we just had a couple of issues here, if I'm not mistaken, right? Just yep. So Brian, you gonna walk us through the last couple of
Certainly.
issues? here?
And I may have Kerry weigh in just to back me up or bail me out. You should have received on or about the 13th, a letter responding to the I think December 6th letter from Bert, just requesting some additional information, fleshing out and or specificity. I can walk in the letter should be in the record.
Yeah.
The items are, I think, 3 in number, more or less, being the temporary snow storage. And on Plan 4, we've addressed that and through coordination with the planning board requirements as well. We've accepted or obliged to remove snow storage from the snow storage designated area within 24 hours in the event of a stockpiling, need for stockpiling there.
So question on that, Brian,
certainly.
the snow storage initially was in front of one of the rain gardens, correct? And
Yes.
then the recommendation was to at least remove that to somewhere else. Is that being removed, that snow storage
No.
area now
I can go.
elsewhere?
Kerry can
Yeah, Chairman, I can go into that in more detail as we.
Yeah.
So Crosspoint Associates own and operates.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
just name and
Sure.
address for the record.
Certainly. Kerry McCormick, Director of Development with Crosspoint Associates with office at 188 Needham Street in Newton, Massachusetts. We're the applicant for 768 Elm Street. So Crosspoint Associates owns and operates a number of shopping centers, over 3 million square feet throughout New England. So what we do is, we have contracts with snow removal vendors. When their snow reaches a certain amount, we're contract to, in certain locations, if we don't have designated or enough for snow storage to remain on site, we contract with them to remove it. So within a snowstorm that's large enough, usually it takes a while to get all the equipment mobilized. And before there's any snow melt or anything like that, that snow pile will be removed. So there's a limited amount of area that to temporarily store snow. The backside of the site is preferably the best to keep it out of the front. So customers can continue to park and access the storefronts. So that is the place we've located the temporary snow, and the idea is to remove it within the 24 hours so that it doesn't snow.
It is still within the,
So it's still in front of the rain garden, if you will, but it's got a 24-hour ticker on it. Is that fair to say?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that should resolve that issue. Okay. Thank you, Kerry.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
These additional items, just going from the letter itself here, invasive species, the commission had requested that we identify the invasive species, and we went out with a handheld GPS and mapped those perimeters, the adjacent side. We didn't map the ex-adjacent side, but that plan was also provided to you December 13th or prior to the last cutoff, where we identified 2 major areas of Japanese knotweed infestation, then other areas that are different species. None of it's a monoculture, perhaps, except the knotweed, but we have mugwort and Asiatic bittersweet and some other undesirables in there, all which have been zonated in the planting plan, the updated planting plan L-1.0. Do I have that up?
It's let me see this.
oh, yeah.
It's attached to the letter, Delia, as well.
Let me,
I think you had it.
that is the one that you were referencing, but I'm gonna let you share screen here, so just give me
I can
1
share.
second.
I have it on a screen too. I could share if need be. If it's easy to dig out.
Oh, I can't-
Go for it.
Share screen, and
Are you gonna do it, Ryan? Okay.
will it work the first time? Has anyone seen that?
Yep.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. It looks good. Yep.
Imagine that. So this is the updated plan, and you can see the color code. There's a key to the left here. Blue being Japanese knotweed predominantly, smartweed and mugwort being the purple. Hopefully they're transmitting right.
Mhm.
I printed it, my colors came out a little funny. And the bittersweet and pokeweed are the kind of beige, and mugwort alone is green. The particular noxious species there are mugwort and knotweed. The others are not particularly desirable, but they're pokeweed is arguably native, but it's a waste place kind of species that really doesn't belong here in what we're envisioning for it. So these are the zones that have been identified, I think 5 in all. There's some areas that are just nondescript between that are represented in white. And I think that was the only identifying those areas, giving them a physical ID was the big question from the commission at that point.
Mhm.
We have on that plan, we have the notations. So it's kind of good that it's in one place for the treatment and follow-up and so forth, as well as addressing, I think, the third item, which is the erosion control or the stabilization material, the Flexterra. But if there's any questions from the commissioners or anybody, we can hopefully answer regarding this updated sheet.
Okay, and Deal, you good with the invasive removal and
Yeah, I mean,
methodology?
pokeweed, I'm sort of on the fence with. It is native, but it is, you know, as Brian said, it is sort of a plant of waste areas. So,
Mm.
you know, I think it's okay in this application.
And I think last time there was a question about foliar spraying or not.
foliar
No
spraying.
foliar anymore, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, I think that
what-
was why we wanted it made clear where the invasive species were, because the Japanese knotweed was going to get sprayed.
That's
Right.
right. So that's right. The knotweed is going to be sprayed.
Okay, but all by a qualified
Right.
entity.
Right.
Okay, all right. Other comments, Nick, Gary? Any
No,
comments?
I'm okay with
Okay.
it.
You
Yep.
good?
no problem.
Okay. All right, I'll go out to the public. Any public comment regarding this application? Don't see any here, any online.
I'm not seeing any online.
Okay, so I think with that, I think we do have an order of condition prepared. And I think that is,
That's
Nick, I
me.
think that's you.
I move that we close and issue an order of conditions for 768 Elm Street, DEP file number 1371650, with findings A, B, C, standard conditions 1 through 20, and special conditions 21 through 57.
Second,
Thank you, Gary. And we'll take the vote. Gary,
aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. All right. Well, thank you. And good luck with the project, Carrie and
Thanks
Brian.
very much, Dan. Thanks for meeting us on this kind of week when nothing happens on the rest of the planet. We appreciate your commissioner's time, in particular, volunteering to be available for this. Thank you.
Exactly.
You bet, likewise. Have a good
Thank
night.
you all. Take care.
All right, moving on to new applications this evening. This is notice of intent, New England Deaconess Association, 165 Ornac, DEP file 137-1659. And who do we have this evening? Phil, if you like, come up and right to the table and join us. We can also we should pull plans up on the screen so people can see.
That would be great.
Yeah, yeah. So I think if you, once we get the plan up for you, if you want to kind of just give us a general overview, what you're planning and what your thoughts are, and then we'll provide some commentary.
So tell me where you would like to go to.
Maybe the site plan?
Yeah, I think that's figure 4, appendix B. There it is.
That one. Okay. So
So just
Yeah.
name and not an address for the
Yeah.
record, please.
Bill Giesentanner, South Great Road, Lincoln is the address.
Mm-hmm.
I work for Massachusetts Audubon Society Extension Service. And we've been engaged by the Deaconess Association to develop a boardwalk as a way of extending the opportunities for outdoor recreation for the 700 residents and staff that live at Newbury Court. And we're seeking permission to go ahead with construction.
Okay,
The plan shows the layout of the boardwalk and the delineated wetlands.
so this is the layout of the proposed boardwalk.
Right,
Okay,
and it
Just to
also,
clarify, everything in yellow would be boardwalk?
yes, the yellow is the boardwalk, the green is the delineated wetlands.
and what you're
Because
showing
much of
here.
that already exists as a trail, correct?
None of the boardwalk exists as a trail. The existing trail is shown on another plan. And that would stay. The boardwalk would connect the walkway to Newbury Court to the existing trail without going through wetlands, and would involve the removal of some bog bridges and the rewilding of the existing trail layout in the area that the boardwalk would replace.
Okay. And what you're showing here in yellow, I think in your submission, there was 4 or 5 iterations of here's a smaller, here's a medium, here's a larger, and so on. So this is the preferred, I think,
Yes,
that you're showing with the lookout
right,
point as well.
right.
Okay. All right. So that's the big picture.
That's the big picture.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I'll just maybe just jump in a little bit. I know staff had some perspective on this, but I think just generally, you know, the commission will need a lot more specifics in regard to this project. It's obviously a good project. It makes, you know, certainly makes a lot of sense, right? To get out there and enjoy the trails and better the trail system for all the residents and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that, you know, just like all the plans that come before the commission, right, we're gonna need some technical information. There's a fair amount of technical information, right? There's, you know, in this case, wetlands, right? There's wetland flagging. So where is the wetland exactly, right? The GIS kind of general coordinates really don't pass muster when it comes to an application of this type, working in such proximity, and certainly in some considerations in the wetlands. So we have to identify that by wetland flagging. And on those plans, typically we put the buffer zones, the 25, the 50, the 100, et cetera. That there's floodplains there. That then, of course, you'd overlay that with your boardwalk and bump outs, right? I think it's a 5-foot.
5 foot
boardwalk you're
wide with
proposing.
bump outs approximately every 300 feet.
Okay. And then again, then as you drop the boardwalk, any details, you know, how it's supported. I know you mentioned 1.5-inch posts. I know you mentioned the bump outs, of course, the lookout point. So any of those details have to go on. Elevations above, you know, because I think you've got to provide enough light and air a little bit into, you know, all the wetland areas. And of course, then standard kind of construction aspects of it, right? Erosion controls, if there's any stockpiling or you want to stage some equipment or materials, where that would go. And so I think, you know, there's a fair amount of kind of that technical plans that have to come before the board before you kind of move ahead with the construction aspects. So I think that's just kind of an overarching statement, right?
And just to also just be clear that you know, for a project of this nature, a GIS plan is not sufficient. It needs to be a survey plan that shows, you know, all of these elements that I was just talking about. And, you know, it does look like there's some areas, so you've presented it as a limited project under the Wetlands Protection Act. But even with that, you have to demonstrate that you have avoided and minimized wetland impacts. It's not permittable unless those impacts have been avoided and minimized. I mean, that's
Right.
straight out
Yeah.
of the bat. That's something that has to be demonstrated, and I don't think that's quite. I think you can do some tweaking to the location, given, what we see with the wetland delineation and the 25-foot buffer, and that needs to be demonstrated in order for the commission to be able to issue an approval under this.
And an example of that, Delia, right? For example, your proposed yellow, right, on the, the lower portion there, it's very close to the 25, right? So that, by mitigating that, stepping just to the other side of the 25, for example,
Mhm.
would mitigate a lot of that linear footage directly in the wetlands. So it's, those are the, where you can mitigate to avoid those kind of,
Mhm.
intrusions into the wetlands. Those are the kind of the steps we're looking for in terms of mitigating and minimizing, if you will.
The other question that I would have on this is that, I mean, it's a boardwalk, and it seems, as a boardwalk, it's fairly innocuous, but DEP does expect with boardwalk projects that there's mitigation. They view this as fill in both floodplain and in wetlands. And if you're able to, I mean, we have a schematic of what your boardwalk might look like, but we don't have any plans that show the elevation, so we don't know whether there's light that's able to penetrate and not cause what would be a vegetative impact to wetlands. If you can demonstrate satisfactorily that there's, then I think you're just looking at impacts that would be from, the footings, whatever those footings are, and showing those details of what that is, and being able to, provide some sort of mitigation. Lincoln just had an order of conditions appealed that was issued to their land trust for a trail construction that did not propose wetland mitigation.
Mm.
So DEP does, I mean, they do.
Look at these
They
things
do look at
closely.
these things,
Yeah.
and, I mean, it seems like it's a fairly innocuous project, but, it still has to go through the same standards as any other project would.
And then I just had a question on, I think the write-up said 1.5 inch post would be the kind of the support. And again, I just don't know how that's, again, I'm no expert in building these things, but just how you kind of support things with just an inch and a half bearing, if you will, every umpteen feet. I don't know if they're 8 feet apart or 10 feet apart or 6 feet apart. But it seems like, there's a decent amount of load that's going to go on these, and it'd be helpful to understand that detail ultimately as well.
And we just had the National Historical Park just did boardwalk replacements on a number of their boardwalks in Concord and Lincoln. And if those plans are helpful to you, we can certainly share those. They did
That's
like a
a good idea.
diamond pier construction for their footings. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful, but we can certainly just,
I'd say sure, yeah, if you want to share that.
It seemed like the latest, very low impact, easy to install kind of footing element, and then they just rested their post on, right,
Right.
to support their things. But again, happy to share that with you as you develop the plans.
So a couple of things I'd like to respond to. David, can you talk about the flagging? Because we did
Sure.
flag the wetlands.
Sure, and I'll just identify David Cameron, Fleetwood Environmental Solutions LLC, 84 Russell Street in Hadley, is where I'm from. And I was making notes feverishly when you were talking,
And we're happy to pass these notes along to you as well. So
Yeah.
it's great, not to,
So as far as the resource, I heard comments about plans that need to show resource areas and everything. We can certainly go back and we can enhance plans and make them more
Mhm.
readable. I just want to make sure if we're going to ask Deaconess for to authorize us to make revisions to plans that were crystal clear on what's
Yep.
actually needed. So the green line on this plan, well, of course, the yellow represents the proposed alignment for the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And during the site walk, Bert suggested that there may be opportunities to pull that out of the
Mhm.
BBW in places, and I think we agreed that's certainly something that we can do.
Yep.
The alignment for the boardwalk was actually laid out by Bill before I delineated the BBW. He had presumed that much more of that area was actually BBW than it is. And so now that we can actually see these things, one superimposed on the other, I think we have some opportunities to minimize
Yep.
wetland impacts. So we can certainly do that. So the green line represents the BVW boundary that I delineated. That's not just a sketch on a GIS map. Those were actually surveyed flag locations. Each one of those flags was actually surveyed. So they're very, very accurate. The BLSF boundary is shown on there that coincides with elevation 120 feet. The riverfront area for both the Sudbury River and I don't know, is it
Jetty Dugan.
Dugan Brook?
Yep.
Okay, they're both reflected.
Mhm.
So I just want to, and of course, we've got very detailed topo data there from LiDAR too. So I just want to make sure if we're going to be doing plan revisions that.
So those are 10-foot contours for LiDAR,
Right.
and we expect, max two,
2 feet.
usually one,
Okay.
and especially if you're dealing with floodplain. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
was
just
gonna
what the-
say, right, yeah, 10 feet is.
Yeah,
Um, oh, okay, sorry, mitigation, that's something we can certainly talk to Deaconess about too.
Yep.
We may have some ideas.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, okay.
So,
There's your back to us and you're speaking up.
Yeah, why don't you, if you want to slide around the table, so making sure the crowd can hear you, that'd be great. Thank you, Justin.
so let me also address the question about the structure.
Yeah.
This is a system that was developed for building docks. And it's an auger, like a helical pier, but it's a very small auger. It's about that big around and can be driven by hand. So it requires no
Yeah.
big equipment.
Yeah.
And so much less of an effect on the wetland than the diamond piers or a big helical pier. They can be driven with a pipe wrench.
so just to have a detail of what that looks like, the
Yeah.
dimensions is helpful. I know that in the application, it did speak about some of the trail or some of the boardwalk being constructed with machinery. But if you're saying that it doesn't need to be, that's
good.
good.
Yeah.
It
It'll
isn't
cost
something,
more not to do it with machinery.
I don't know how you bring machinery into the wetlands.
Yeah.
So I can answer that if you want.
Sure.
We wrote it up that way because it hasn't gone out to all the potential bidders. And we have no idea what means or methods they would want to use to install it. The way, to answer your question, the way you would get in there, and again, the proposal here is to try to do this without cutting a single live tree. That's the way the alignment's been laid out so far. You would use, they call them minis. It's like a mini excavator.
Mhm.
It's got a blade on one side, it's rubber tracked, it's rubberized tracked, and it's I just measured one at a construction site a couple weeks ago. It's about 5 feet, 7 inches, the effective width of it. So you can throw down these portable, I don't know. there's some kind of-
Mats.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah, yeah.
a high density polycarbonate. They're called, one of the companies is called Alterna. They're called Alterna mats. You can throw them down and just drive on those. So we threw that in the narrative, not knowing precisely what the selected contractor would want to do and recognizing that that may be a big factor for the overall costs of the project. But as Bill said, it is possible to do it without heavy machinery. It'll take more time and it'll be more costly. I just wanted to make sure, because you've been asking about specific questions about the design of the boardwalk. This was part of the application, hopefully that. Did you not see that? This should be I think it's figure 5. Yeah, it'd be before that, I think.
no, that's
Yeah, it's-
something that was in the application.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that necessarily, but I missed it.
I apologize if it isn't in there. Should be figure 5.
But that's
Right,
okay,
okay,
because
so
the thing
anyway,
is eventually what you
yeah.
really want to work to, what the commission almost wants to see is almost your construction set.
Yeah.
If you will, right? You've got components of it prepared, which is great. But then as you pull that together, it starts to look and feel more like, what you'd be following along with the contractor, right? If you
Right.
will. Plan,
So
survey, construction details.
as I've built these in other situations, especially without a detailed plan, survey plan of every tree. It's a lot of layout in the field, working with the contractor on site, and avoiding impacts that way. So, and the same with where we put bump outs and things. It's all, a lot of it is in the field management. And so a construction set is something I've not done on these projects. So it's just details and a general layout and flagging in the field and then working with the contractor to minimize impacts. I don't know how comfortable you are with that, but
Well, I think, for example, I'm going back to like Giroux, where they laid out all their paths, right? But I do recall we went out, once that was laid out in the field, I think the commission and staff went out there and looked at it because they had some issues like that as well, where there was a couple of, or a handful of trees that, hey, we don't want to take this down, right? We're running right into this, so how about if we're gonna slide over to this side and then swing it back this way, and it got resolved that way. But I think it's important to have a baseline plan set that says this is the intent, knowing that there'd be field issues. I don't know, Delia, does that, something like that make sense to have the plan, but then once it's laid out in the field with the contractor you choose,
There may be some field modifications.
maybe staff
I mean,
can
that's
come out with you
right.
and sign off in the general.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if you come up against an issue that wasn't initially approved, staff can come back and say,
Right.
yeah, sure.
Right.
And
I mean, that happens all the time, especially with a trail project. But I think having, I mean, again, with Giroux, there's that level of
The-
detail on the plans that, everybody has a little bit more level of comfort that we all know what the impacts are going to be and how they're going to be mitigated. And for something like having, you do have the wetlands delineated, you have the boardwalk shown, but with it is not the level of detail that is enough
formidable.
for,
point,
the commission to issue an approval on something like this.
I'm struggling with sort of visualizing what would be at the level that you need.
So Giroux and National Park Service, we can send you those two plan sets
Yeah.
so
That'd be a
that you
good-
can understand what that looks like. But it would be an engineered drawing set.
Along with a narrative that explains, it's fine to make some calls in the field, but a narrative that explains how you make those decisions, how you minimize impact. So some of the narrative accompanying a plan set that at least, reflects the boardwalks as much as possible outside the wetlands and so forth. So, modifications to the plan set, but also some narrative that explains how you intend to minimize impacts.
Yeah, and that step-by-step process, for example, get a contractor on board, we'll lay it in the field, we'll have staff come out, take a look at that, make sure, have the close approximation to the plan. And then, of course, they can be on reasonable call if other issues come up that the contractor wants to deviate from the initial layout and sign off.
Right. I mean, essentially, we would expect that as with any project that gets approved by the commission, we do a pre-construction site visit on every single project. We go out, we look at and try to, head off any issues like that. Trails can be a little more complicated just because, sometimes they can be, but, I don't want to give the impression that we're going to be coming out on a weekly basis with, meeting with a contractor and doing a
No.
shift every,
Yeah.
because it really, with having that, additional level of detail, it should just be something that's a little bit more, I think on Giroux, I think we might have gone out, 3 times on that trail alignment.
Yeah, I
And
think commission only went out once for the
Yeah.
initial walkthrough,
Yeah.
then.
And the Park Service was more, I mean, but it was, that was in wetlands, so, and those were replacements. So those boardwalks had been there for a long time. I don't know if they would have been permitted now in the locations that they were, but they were replacements, and that's obviously different than a new alignment, in wetlands.
So, again, just sort of the process that I've used in the past is to do a detail layout by pin flagging the layout in the field.
Mhm.
with two sets of flags on either side of what is actually going to be the trail. Maybe they're 6 feet apart instead of the 5 feet, so there's a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot. And that's done, prior to construction, prior to bringing any equipment on board. And I would be happy to move the layout that we've shown here, now that I know where the wetlands are delineated, to avoid more of the impact on the wetlands. So that could be done. This is more of a center line layout.
Right, and we need the limits, you know,
Yeah.
so like what you're talking about with, you know, flagging in the fields.
Yeah.
Then that gets surveyed onto a plan.
It's
and-
avoiding the cost of surveying that I'm sort of worried about.
Without a
I-
survey, we're not kind of tied to some baseline, right? In other words, we're
Right.
not exactly sure where things are going out there in the field. And
Right.
that's the problem. I
And
think.
it's not really possible to pre-approve something that then gets flagged later in the field for the contractor to. You know, it's
Understand.
just, yeah, it's just a
Understand.
challenge. It's just putting the carpet, and I think we fully appreciate, you know, the additional cost with the survey, but. I mean,
See what else we can do, really.
So I just want to ask a question just to make, and maybe provide a clarification. So that yellow alignment has also been surveyed, just so the commission is clear. That is that represents something that was surveyed in the field. I'm not sure why this didn't make it into the application. This is intended to show two representative sections of the boardwalk. So the way we calculated the impacts, I actually did it in a couple of different ways. I took the linear footage of the yellow line, knowing what the total width of each section was, and had the draftsperson do takeoffs of each section within each specific resource area to quantify I call it, I mean, it's not even a shading impact. Most of the site is shaded anyway. The shadow of the
Yeah.
elevated boardwalk,
Yeah.
this shows everything's gonna be a minimum of 6 inches off of the ground. And then I did an actual quantification using a 1.5 inch diameter post per number of posts per unit, understanding how many units there are per linear distance of the alignment. And so those numbers are both represented in the form and in a table in the narrative. And I think the post impacts are, I think the biggest one is in BVW. It's less than 6 square feet.
Yeah.
If you quantify all that.
Yeah.
So as far as, I'm not sure that I'm not gonna argue. I don't know if that DEP considers that a fill or not. There's a limited project for these types of projects. I
absolutely,
think.
100%.
Well, the Corps of Engineers and DEP.
I
doesn't
understand
consider
Corps
it a
doesn't,
fill. Yeah.
DEP, anything that is fill in BVW is. And it is down to a square foot. I mean, we've
Okay.
had this conversation, and every region is different, but Northeast is very,
Okay, so then I need to ask a few more questions before,
Sure.
so that we can then
Yeah.
reconnoiter with our clients and figure out how they want to proceed. If there's 5.7 square feet of BVW being filled from the posts going in the ground, is the commission going to be seeking wetlands replication for that 5.7?
we don't have a choice. So
Well,
as I just said,
You,
Lincoln
it's a limited
issue,
project, so that actually does give you the choice.
not yet. You have not demonstrated that you have avoided and minimized. So, you know, you do a limited project when you are exceeding standards, and that replication, that avoidance, minimize and replication would still be required
Sure.
under that. Right?
Okay, yep, so that answers that question.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, replication. There are 4 or 5 questions I have. The way this is written up is that no stormwater management is proposed because there's no new
Yeah.
impervious surfaces. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we could put gutters on the side, but that wouldn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
It's gotta go
there's no
somewhere.
use of That. I also we didn't put anything on the plans about sedimentation and erosion controls because the intent is not to actually generate any soil at all. If these things are just being hand drilled or driven into the soil. So I'm not sure
Well, if
where
you,
we would put them or what.
well,
they
if you
would do.
auger, there's gonna be some small right?
And if
Something's gonna
you've
come
got,
up.
I mean, so I think,
So-
say you bring in some equipment and you have swamp mats, and you're gonna come up to a certain point, and maybe as far as that goes with the equipment, then you might have some erosion controls before you take that material off the equipment and then bring it in by hand, something like that. So where there are areas where you're gonna have a little bit of slope, and it is hard to tell with with the LiDAR plans, where you have a little bit of slope and you're looking to just make sure you don't have any erosion and sedimentation into wetlands. I think it may be minimal, but there's likely some ENS controls that are going to be needed.
So this is like, I get the commission's intending to provide some sample plans that we could take a look at for similar
Sure.
project. Did they propose and show sedimentation and erosion controls in
They
the
did.
project? How did they offhand?
I think around
So is it
The-
the footings of the boardwalks at where they had, and in the case of the National Park Service, those, they basically, as I just described, they had where they had, say the boardwalk was here and they bring the equipment up to this point. And so that's where their erosion controls were.
So did they mark the limits of work then?
They
The
did,
erosion controls?
yeah. In other words, the equipment would stop there, they'd offload their equipment, they wanted to store some gases, I remember, or something for their equipment, and we had them put it in a
That was all.
little containment
So-
further back,
Right.
It
right?
was mainly
Right.
for the staging and stockpile area?
Correct,
And the equipment, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they didn't put, say, 4 hay bales around each
No.
post?
No, they
No,
did
no,
not.
no, no,
Okay,
no,
no,
no.
no,
So
no.
absolutely,
Right.
and I think we can work to identify staging and stockpile areas for the
Materials,
sections,
yeah.
and we can, yeah, absolutely, we can show us some controls around that, I think, okay.
Yeah.
Bear with me. Okay, so this is the elephant in the room, I think, and before we speak to our clients and seek their permission to potentially develop a set of plans that are going to be much more detailed and have cost implications. The Concord Wetlands bylaw has a no-build zone, 2 different no-build zones, 25 and 50 feet, correct?
No disturb and no build.
Okay, so I think we can certainly work on tweaking the alignment to pull things out of BVW and potentially out of the 25-foot in some areas.
Yeah.
But one can't have a wetland boardwalk
No.
and be able to adhere to those.
Right, so
provisions,
the
so-
50-foot is a policy, the bylaw is for 25-foot no disturb zone, the 50-foot no build is a policy, and there are provisions for uses that I would call a water dependent use. So I'd have to look at it again, but I think you are able to construct in the 50-foot no builds zone under the exceptions that we have in there. So, and we can talk about that offline, because I mean, that's certainly
Well,
something that
We
is,
specifically sought a waiver from those anyway, it's in the
Yeah.
narrative, so I just
Mhm.
want to make sure before we ask our client to invest more funds in this project, that it's not going to be that those provisions aren't going to be a showstopper.
well, the 25 is that's a tough one. Those are really just restorative in nature, but again,
You've got a tough issue here though with, looks like lot lines on Plan West, right? In
Mhm.
terms of the 25 seems to be,
right,
if that's the,
the purple is the 25.
yeah.
Right. So that is gonna be challenging. It has been something that the commission has permitted for trail projects.
Could you explain that a little bit more? I'm not sure I'm following. So you're
So the
saying,
commission has permitted work in the 25 for trail projects.
okay, so I guess maybe I'm missing the point, or I'm not understanding. If there are portions of the boardwalk that are proposed to be within the interior of the BVW,
Within the wetland,
right?
yeah, so those need to come out. I mean, to the maximum extent practicable, and I think that needs to be, there are areas where that can happen, and there may be areas where it can't.
That's
Right.
the
And
mitigation
those are the
aspect.
mitigative
Okay,
areas,
so
right?
the areas where it can't come out of
Yeah.
BVW,
Yeah,
obviously the the provisions of the buffer zone that is a no build or no disturb that they can't possibly be complied with because it's going to be crossing those
Right.
zones to go into the wetland.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so that's not necessarily going to be a showstopper where there are sections going in BBW.
As long as you can show that you're avoiding and minimizing, then yes,
okay.
I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
we have trails and boardwalks in wetlands in the 25 and the 50
Okay.
on
That's,
conservation land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great.
Mhm.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification.
It's a challenge, but it's,
It is,
it
is.
I understand. I think we understand. And, look forward to a continuance, I guess.
All right. And do you want us to, obviously, there's a lot you have to talk internally with, et cetera, et cetera. So, on a continuance, any thought on timing, or do you want us just to place you on? Well,
So January 17th is the next meeting and revisions would have to be in by a week from Friday.
Yeah.
So you may want to push out to the first February meeting.
That sounds more reasonable.
Okay,
Actually, offhand, you know what the date is for that?
Karen. Let me,
let's see, the
Let me see.
17th plus 3, probably around the 8th or 9th or something.
So early February.
it should be early February. Let me just check. So February 7th.
7th.
Great.
I have a question for
Please,
clarification.
Nick. Yeah.
Just on the issue of survey, he says they surveyed it. Are we expecting a stamped survey or just, is it okay? As I heard
I
it,
think we need-
just put the survey on top of this GIS map, but what are we exactly? looking for?
So I think what you're saying is that you took a GIS unit out with you and surveyed.
Survey crew did.
Okay, so the flags and the trail location have been located. Survey located, but the topography and other features have not, so those survey
Yeah,
features were
baseline
placed
survey.
onto a LiDAR,
Yeah,
aerial plan.
so we'll need a baseline survey done, right? For the topography and putting the flags on it, then you can overlay right?
Yes.
Your located.
So is that instrument
boardwalk.
survey? Do you know? Is that instrument?
This was a GPS handheld.
Okay. Well, I don't know how accurate.
Are we looking
That's
for a
fairly
stamp?
accurate.
A stamp?
Yes.
Are we looking for a
Yeah.
stamped survey?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we get that on every project.
So PLS.
That's what I thought.
stamps.
Yes, yeah.
I have some.
But again, if we share the National Park Service examples, they're gonna see what, we're expecting.
Yeah, and Giroux would be a good one to show too,
Yep,
just in
yep.
terms of the various trails they had and some of the considerations they had, just because they were kind of weaving their way through as well.
Right,
Okay,
right.
yeah, it's good to know, especially if they got appealed.
Oh, that
Lincoln got
was a
appealed.
different
It was a
project.
different-
Okay.
So Lincoln Concom issued an approval to their land trust. And it was appealed because there was no mitigation
Oh, okay.
proposed.
I see.
So we don't want to find ourselves in the same situation.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, nor do we.
And that was
Exactly.
only 6 months ago, so
So mitigation can be,
wetlands replacement. So, and
That's-
I don't love that either. I mean, I don't love,
Well-
so find a degraded area of upland. And, it's not going to be a lot and bring it down to a wetland elevation and plant it.
Well, we can do that for the permanent fill of BBW since it's only
Right.
5.7 square feet.
And then you'll
That's-
just have to demonstrate
have
that the
other
boardwalk
ideas for
itself is
mitigation.
not going to
Have
cause
any
shading
impact,
issues.
right, so
Or
that,
other
yeah,
impacts.
yeah.
Right.
I've got some ideas that I think could
well,
work.
I wonder if we should at least ask about those ideas.
So I'm happy to have an offline call, about those.
might be more productive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to make any commitments yet either,
Yeah.
so.
There you
right.
go.
Even
I
if
think
it's-
it might make sense to have a conversation with, your clients. Yeah.
Good.
these are the green cards and the receipts for the butter notification.
Karen already has those.
Comment.
She has copy,
Yeah.
scanned these, but not, do you need the green cards, Karen?
We don't.
Can you
No, I
keep
do
those? Okay.
Okay,
I made some corrections. I really struggled with the name of this road. I was calling it
Oh.
Old Route 9 for some reason.
It's okay. It's Ornac. Everyone calls it Ornac.
I made some corrections to figure 1 and figure 2.
well, you got it just right. If it's all
I
right, so-
also caught some errors I had on the BBW data forms and when I calculated the prevalence indices for the plant species. So I corrected that and then noticed I had Old Route 9 on the date sheets.
Okay,
Now,
so
before
if you could also just submit those electronically to Karen.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so before everybody goes, is there any public comment regarding this project? Yes,
Just a simple question. You offered,
oh, name and
Mark.
address.
Mark Basso, I work at Newburyport, I live in Foxborough.
Okay,
You offered two different previous project plans back to these folks as an example of what you're expecting. Can you
well,
give them a time frame of when you'll have that available to them? Because they're on a short time frame to get back to you.
sure, I think they're in the file, so I think
We'll send them out tomorrow.
tomorrow. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right, Delia, any comments from the Zoom gallery?
I am not
Certainly.
seeing anybody
Oh.
here.
All right, yes,
Hi, Joanne Gibson, 100 Newbury Court, and I'm along with Janet here, the co-chair of the Trails Committee, and most of the people here are on the Trails Committee. And this isn't what I was planning to say, because I thought things were gonna be just going on swimmingly, as it were. So I just want to get some idea of time frame. I mean, we were really hoping, this is a very important project for
Mhm.
us. I mean, it's how we get out the door. There are 800 people kind of waiting to go out and walk on this. And I don't want to get people's hopes up if this is just gonna be mired in what it sounded like it was tonight. In other words, when you meet on the 7th of February, that will be, we will have had a survey by then, is that right?
well, I think that eventually will be up for your professionals to answer as well as ownership, right? If you will, in terms of,
But if we say we can't afford it, then we're dead in the water, as it were. I mean,
perhaps.
Yeah. So,
That is correct.
in other words, we have to do a survey before we can move forward,
At a minimum.
at the minimum.
Yes.
And then there's several other things to do. Typically, what would the back and forth be on something like this?
Again, it depends on what we receive at the commission. So if, the consultants are in talking with staff, looking at plans, as they prepare that information, if you will. If it's in really good information, if it's in really good shape on February 7th, if that's the date you come back before us, then my guess of it is we'll probably make a lot of good headway there. Probably there wouldn't be an order of condition prepared that evening
Mhm.
because we're going to be learning about a lot of the stuff that has been now prepared. But if it's in good shape, best guess is that an order of conditions could be given out the next meeting after that,
Which would be.
end of February,
Every
3 weeks.
every-
Yes, so the 28th, I guess.
Third last day of February.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, but they can't, well, all right, that gives me an idea, but are how expensive are surveys? I'm just curious.
No idea.
They have any-
Well, I have an idea, but I wouldn't want to guess because I don't know the extent and the where you're starting from, et cetera, et cetera. So, but again, those are if we get good quality material in, it's going to make the process go a lot smoothly, if you will, in the future. So, yes, please.
I have a question.
Name and address, please.
Betsy Moyer, 80 Deaconess Road, Concord, Massachusetts, 01742.
Thank you.
I want to know, is there a sample we can look at that is successful, that has met your requirements, that has been accepted by the commission, but is kind of similar to what our problem, like someone else who was trying to build something in the wetlands, a boardwalk or something like that?
Yeah.
That we can look at.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think that kind of dovetails with the aspect of getting you the National Park Service plans and the Giroux Park plans. So that your professionals can look at that and, take away some details from that or some thoughts and kind of drive them into their plans as well. Because those have been approved and I think, built at this
Mhm,
point, so.
And there's some in Concord.
Yes, yeah, both of those are in Concord. For the most part, there's some in Lincoln, I think.
Right,
on
the national park
on the
service
national park
straddles
also.
both Concord
Yeah.
and Lincoln.
It's a good question though, because that, just seeing it done on one plan is very helpful to kind of help
Yeah.
produce the next plan.
Ken
Yes, please.
Bucknell, 80 Deaconess Road, Concord. I found it very hard to hear you, and I just want to define maybe 1, 2, 3 major points that you really are concerned about, like, was it the slope where the trail starts? Obviously, part of the wetland. What were your 3 main points that you're worried about?
So I would say the 3 main points are making sure that the trail as proposed is avoiding and minimizing wetland impacts.
Yeah.
The second would be that the plan, that the proposed work is shown on a surveyed plan with a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
And
Details.
and just more details for how the boardwalk is going to be constructed. What do the footings look like? How far above grade is it going to be? What's the loading? Is that sufficient to carry the weight of the boardwalk?
Okay, thank you.
And I would add more on the narrative of how you're planning to avoid and minimize. You very eloquently said verbally that you plan on avoiding and minimizing impacts on the wetlands. Having that written down in narrative form would be very helpful.
Yeah.
And where you're going to put any machinery or stockpile anything you need to.
Yeah, a number of provisions, but those are probably the highlights.
Yeah.
Yes,
Jim Breslauer, 100 Newbury Court. We moved to Concord about 4 years ago, and before that, I spent many years on conservation commissions. And so I can appreciate the minutia to which you're referring. I'm very familiar with the area, and this project will have, minimal, if any, adverse impact on the wetlands. When we moved here, my wife and I walked the Buttercup Trail many times. We found it, very, very soothing, we needed it. After about a year, my wife's condition changed to the point that she could no longer navigate on the Buttercup Trail, which was a tremendous loss for her. 2 months ago, she passed. And I've been on the Buttercup Trail numerous times since then to try to soothe myself inside, because nature really does that for me. But I can foresee a time in the foreseeable future when I can no longer navigate the Buttercup Trail. And I'm really gonna need to be able to get out in the woods to take care of my mental health. So I'm really hoping that once these minutiae are taken care of, you'll be able to approve this very important project to a lot of elders and those with mobility impairments.
thank you.
Ed, can I just respond on behalf of the NRC? I just want to say for Betsy and Joanne and others who are there, my parents, Herb and Liz Kleiman, who are in Unit 348, also are at Newbury Court. They're no longer walking. They're no longer using the Buttercup Trail, but I do want to say I'm very familiar with how valuable that trail is to everybody at Newbury Court. My mother-in-law, Barbara Nelson, lived there until 2009 when she passed, but I have been a long time advocate of the trails around Newbury Court for at least 15 years. And I run through there myself every day. I live in West Concord. Believe me, we're on the same glide path here. We just have some paperwork. I would not get too worried about this. We just need to see the plans that your professionals have documented the way that the NRC is expecting to see them. So it's just going to take a little bit more time, but I think that it's a great concept. And in general, we're very supportive of trails. Just they need to minimize impacts on the wetlands. So that's the thing, is just ship them outside the wetlands. But I think we can come up with something that'll be a great amenity for everybody who lives at Newbury Court. We just need to work together for a little bit longer.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah,
Mark Bessel again. You've talked a couple times and mentioned the term offline. If there are questions that our professionals have of you in between the time you provided them
Yes.
the guidelines you're looking
Yeah.
for, and they have questions,
pick up
can
the
that
phone.
be handled offline, or
Sure.
do I have to wait till the next meeting?
No, pick up the phone,
People
give
call
Julie
all
a
the
call
time,
and,
they email all the time.
yep,
Purely to expedite everything.
right. They're here to assist.
Good job.
Yep,
Looking forward to it.
okay.
Thank you, guys.
Any other comments? Okay, I think with that, we look forward to seeing you back soon.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Well, guys, we're gonna continue with the meeting, so if you could hold any conversations until you're outside the room, that would be appreciated. Take your time, please. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you again for all of your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll also thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Great turnout.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice turnout.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Evening. Let's see, next project up. Let me just go to my. Is a notice of intent for Hawthorne Lane Realty Trust, 141 Hawthorne Lane, DEP file 137-1657. Matt, is Matt with us this
Matt
evening?
is online.
Yeah, I'm
Ah.
actually on the Zoom screen.
Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, guys. Am I gonna share a screen or did you guys want to do that?
If you have the plan, I have it, but it's easier if you know what you want to show.
I have the
Sure,
plan, so
yeah,
that would be great if I could do that.
Sure.
Go for it.
Thank you very much. Can everybody see that okay?
Give it a minute.
And Matt, while you're at it, just name and address for the record.
My name is Matt Morrow. I am the owner of Morrow Environmental Consulting, and I am representing Hawthorne Lane Realty Trust for 141 Hawthorne Lane. Kim Walsh and Chris Bonner are co-trustees.
Okay, so your screen is not, we just see a black screen. Are you sure that you're sharing?
Yeah, I can try it again.
Okay, yeah, why don't you do so? Thanks.
It's weird. For some reason, my screen is frozen, which is very
We'll bring it up.
Okay, I'll just bring it up.
There we go. This look good, Matt?
I can't see anything because my screen is frozen. I can still actually
Oh.
see you guys on the Zoom, which is really unusual.
Okay, well, I think we have the plan up, the house, the proposed leaching field, etc.
Okay, so what we have, 141 Hawthorne Lane is a single family home on a 1.45 acre lot. The entirety of the lot, in fact, the majority of that neighborhood is within the floodplain. It's a zone X. As a matter of fact, on the open space across the street, looks like you have a floodway. So,
Actually, this is not in the floodplain. It's within the 500-year floodplain.
okay, because my map was showing the 100-year floodplain.
So if it's in the 500 dealer, we don't need any compensatory storage as well.
Yeah.
Correct?
I mean,
Okay.
if it's not, if my an error, then we can. I had a provision where we were going to restore 1,400 cubic feet of floodplain in the front of the system. And we were going to remove 6 trees in the front. Oh, there you go. My screen just unfroze. Excellent. Okay, we were going to remove the 6 trees in the front and the box labeled 6. So if my maps are in error, then we can withdraw that
Good.
from the notice of intent and leave the trees in place.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially what we're left with a very simple septic system replacement. It's a geomat system. The system would not traverse within the 50-foot zone. 50-foot zone is shown on the plans. We would set up erosion protection for the limit of work for the 50-foot zone. Replace the tanks, replace the system. It would be done within a 3-week work schedule. The total alteration of the buffer zone would be 1,638 square feet without taking that floodplain that apparently isn't there into consideration. In examining it, that basically is on lawn. It would be restored to existing lawn. We did have 7 trees proposed for planting in the back of the yard in case we did have to remove those 6 trees. But apparently all we'll have to remove now is there's one in the field itself, which is an ornamental tree. It's a non-native. So I don't know if you want that replaced with something native in the back. We can do that. It's up to you guys.
Sheila, that's your call.
I don't think it's necessary for an ornamental. I mean, if the applicant is willing to plant a native, I think that's great, but I don't think that the commission is gonna need to require it.
So the one question, Matt, that you did say was that everything's outside the 50 except that you got the septic tanks in the 50.
You're right. I stand corrected. That's the
So
only
we're-
area that would be within the 50. So you're
Well, I think you
talking
flip them to the other side.
probably because the driveway's there.
Well, understand that, but it's still trying to get it out of the 50.
Okay, so I mean, the area is existing lawn. And it will remain as lawn. We're just simply going in, taking out the old tanks and putting in the new tanks.
Where are the old tanks?
They're
Yeah, I can-
within the same
I
footprint.
can tell.
They're in the
They're within
same.
the same footprint.
And you have and you've got 2 tanks here proposed.
Can you zoom in on that
correct?
for me, Delia? Okay, so you've got 2 tanks here. You have the front tank would be like within the footprint of the existing tank. The second tank is added for flowage purposes. It's very common in septic replacements to have that second tank. And moving it to the other side would involve putting it in the area close to the driveway. Don't think that would be allowed under Title V. I do know that the Board
No,
of Health,
there's no
Tank, I've seen tanks in
under
paved
driveways.
areas and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a tank after all,
It
right?
can't be within, I forget what the distance, it can't be within, I think it's 15 feet of the house.
10, I think it's 10,
Yeah,
10 feet.
but there's a
foundation wise,
driveway,
Yeah,
right? I don't think there's a driveway requirement.
I mean, once the tank's in, you got access hatches to
Right.
inspect it and pump it or clean it.
So the problem is that, I mean, you're placing something within the 50 when it doesn't seem like you need to do that. And if that's the case, regardless, the policy says, whether it's underground even, it then requires 10-to-1 mitigation. And so it just seems like it's going to be an easier, situation to flip it over to the other side. I don't know whether it can go, here so that you have enough room to work with, that you're not, getting into the driveway. It looks like it would fit here. You're removing this tree anyway. So I think it's just something to talk to your designer and see if that's something that's a feasible thing to do.
Yeah, I know we had a project not too long ago where you recall it's an old septic system and they had you wanted to put the tank back within the
Yep.
50 and we asked him,
Yes,
gotta get it outside the 50 and he moved it
Yep.
10 feet outside the 50.
right.
So
Yeah.
I think we gotta be, again, trying to be as
Consistent.
consistent as possible with the approach.
Right. And I just want to confirm on the floodplain here now, and now I'm doubting myself. The 155.
It is.
141.
He zoomed past the floodplain. Oh, there.
So, yeah, it's outside the 100, it's within the 500.
Great. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
All right,
that is
now-
a good thing. So you can
Save the
just take that
trees.
note
Yep.
6 and 7 and just clean up the plan so that those existing trees remain.
So
okay,
back to the
in the meantime, I will I'll talk to Evan about moving those out and see what we can do now. What happens if we're not able for whatever reason to move them out?
Just, why don't we have a conversation about that? I think, if you're having trouble with that, then just send me an email and we'll see what the problem is. I mean, it seems like it's doable, so.
Okay, I can do that.
Great.
Yeah,
When's
again,
next week?
yeah, the only other question I had is I don't know if you can slide the system a little closer to the road and put the tanks between the house and the system, if you got that 10 feet off the house. Right, I just don't know the
Right, you're starting
dimensions
to
there.
Push up against the trees.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. You're gonna get into all the root systems of the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably not a good idea. Okay, so Matt, should we hold you for the next meeting?
Yeah,
The
when
other
is it?
thing, the
Oh,
Ed that
I
I
will.
would raise before we finish is, if you're gonna keep those trees, then we probably need the tree protection detail for those trees.
Yes,
Those-
yeah, good point. Yeah.
I
And,
actually did insert a tree protection
right, there's a,
narrative part, so I'll make sure he adds that on the plan.
Right,
The-
make sure it's the Concord detail.
yeah, Concord uses slightly different tree protection usually, so.
We've got a typical detail you can get from staff,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yep. Okay.
All right, and before we go, any public comment on this application? I know there's nobody here in person anyway.
I don't see any hands.
All right. Now, Matt, are you good on, you want to hold, should we hold you for the 17th?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a nice evening.
All right, take care.
You too.
It's so long.
Happy New Year.
You too.
All right. Let's see. So now we've got our last, I think, new application, which is a notice of intent for 103 Haywood Mill Road, DP file 137-1658. And do we have a representative of Cornerstone Engineering?
Yep, Vito Colonna with Cornerstone Engineering, with a representative for the project, for the applicant Spiridon Contianas. And I guess I can start right in. I'll just share my screen.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, so this is at 103 Haywood Mill Road. Existing 3-bedroom house with a failed septic system. To the rear of the site is Haywood's Pond, and it has a BVW and bank associated with it. And there's also a floodplain, 100-year floodplain, but it's generally coincides down at the Toa slope with the wetlands. So we have our 100-foot buffer zone right through the site, and then our 100 and 200-foot riverfront areas that extend basically over the entire site. Right now they have a cesspool right next to the house, right in here, that little clouded area. It's a failed cesspool, it needs to be replaced. So what we did was we held the house plumbing, brought it out to a new septic tank, into a pump chamber, and then we're going to pump it up into the far corner of the lot, up into this spot right in this location. So the leach field itself would be fully outside the buffer. It would be in the riverfront area, but it's basically as far as we can get it away from that, the edge of the river. The new tank itself would be 90 feet from the edge of the resource areas. And then this limit of work right through here would be 74 feet from the limit of the resources. And all the work would be in existing disturbed areas and lawn areas. So we wouldn't really have any tree removal, and it'd all be restored post-construction back to lawn to match the existing conditions. Around the edges, we do have erosion barrier around the edge, and I believe we used a silt fence, just only silt fence right through there. And then kind of delineating the limit of work along that edge of tree line, so they stay in the lawn itself during the work. I think that's all we had. I'll just hand it back over.
Thank you, Vito. I don't have any comments on it. It looks like it's a good improvement over a cesspool, and it seems like it's pretty straightforward. You're keeping everything as far away as possible from the wetlands, so that's great. Gary, Nick, Sarah?
Nothing.
Any public
All right.
comment?
No, looks fine.
Ready for motion?
Yeah, I was gonna go to public comment. I just want to make sure you guys didn't have anything. All right, any public comment? Not seeing anything?
Nope.
All right. I think with that, Gary,
Yeah, so I would move that we close and issue order of conditions under DEP file 137-1658 for 103 Hayward Mill Road, with findings A and B, standard conditions 1 through 20, and special conditions 21 to 51.
Second.
Second.
all right, thank you, Nick, and we'll take the vote. Gary,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. Thank you, Vito. Good luck with the project.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Take care. All right, I think with that, we are done. Extension request. Got Concord Running Gun Club.
Yeah.
Delia.
We have Heather Newton
Oh, okay.
on the line for that.
Good evening, Heather.
Hello. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, so my name's Heather Newton. I'm a consultant working with Concord Run Gun Club. I work for Gomez and Sullivan Engineers, based out of the Henniker, New Hampshire office. So that address is 41 Liberty Hill Road, Henniker, New Hampshire, 03242. And just to give you a little background, I guess, on the project, we originally received the order of condition permit for the project from the NRC back in September 20th, 2019. It was extended due to tolling with the pandemic, and then so that it expired the end of this year. So we're seeking an extension because the work isn't quite finished. We've made progress, but there's some additional areas that still need to be completed. So I'm going to pull up the original plans and just kind of walk through what's been done and what still needs to be done. And then also, I believe Chris Pryor is also here virtually from the Concord Run Gun Club, and he can speak more to what's been done related to the invasive species, which was also part of the order. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And we'll see how this works. Okay. Okay. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So just to, I don't know, jog your memory, but this is the project. So we've the Concord Run Gun Club, Andrews Pond. The actual driveway or road to the gun club is the crest of this dam. And there was a state inspection of the dam. Gosh, I think it was back in 2016.
Years ago.
2016-ish. There's some dam safety concerns at the dam. And the big things being there were several trees on the dam, which is, seepage and piping concern, as well as, if you have a high wind event, the trees can overturn and the root balls can pull, huge chunks out of the dam. And so that's a major dam safety concern. So part of the work was proposed to remove these large trees that are all identified on this plan. And basically, restore the embankment with compacted filter material and reseed it so that it's, a reestablished embankment with no large trees. And then the other piece, there was some past erosion areas that right here near the spillway. So that also needed to be repaired with, compacted filtered type material. We had some details on the second page of what that needed to look like, that repair. And then the third major thing was replacing in kind the bridge, the wooden bridges here. concrete piers weren't going to be replaced, but just the timber. And then some localized areas of repaving around those bridges. And so, you know, from the engineering perspective, which I was most involved with, you know, was the tree removal, this erosion repair, and then the work on the crest. What's been done to date, back in 2022, we did the tree removal and the embankment restoration. And I do have some photos of that work kind of before and after, if it's helpful. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at the site since that's been done. Let me know if you want me to show those pictures or not, but that was a successful project of just doing that. Can you see this screen?
Not yet. Still looking at the plan.
Okay, hang on. Let's see. How about now?
Yep. You see your
Okay.
pictures.
So we did this work back in, we finished it September of 2022. So I kind of have some nice before and after pictures here of the work that was done. We had installed the silt sock as proposed. This is, you know, looking at, you know, if you're looking downstream, this is looking towards the right abutment. So you can see some of the heavy trees and vegetation on this dam. So we removed those trees as identified in the plans, and we compacted the fill. And this was also, you know, you can't see it in these pictures, but we did reseed that. This is looking at kind of mid dam. There's actually kind of this high point where it slopes. It's an unusual shaped dam, but it slopes down on either side, on the downstream side. So we've got, again, a lot of trees, but we removed those, restored the embankment there. And then this is looking towards the left abutment. So you can see just how we kind of cleared that and restored the embankment. And lastly, this is standing on the left abutment, looking back towards the right. So, you know, this picture was looking standing up here, and now we're looking, you know, back across. So, you know, I was on site when they did this work. You know, we followed the plans, and you know, as far as I know, it was successful, and everything is working well there. No issues. So that was good.
Yep. Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to the plan. Sorry, I'm used to Teams, so this is a little different for me, navigating Zoom. Let's see. Share. Okay. So yeah, so that was this work. So again, those pictures were kind of looking in this area and looking in this area, and then again back through this way. So that work has been done. Then this past summer, the erosion repair work was done over here by the spillway. And Concord Run Gun Club did send me some photos of the work that was done there, which I can share as well.
If you could just submit those.
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be
Sure.
great.
Sure, I can do that. So, yep, that was done this past summer. And, you know, I think, Delia, you were at the pre-construction meeting. I think we mentioned that this whole project was kind of going to be a phased approach just because of the expense of doing each of these things. So again, 2022 was the trees. This past summer was the erosion repair. And the plan is to, you know, do the bridges and the crest and paving, you know, hopefully next summer kind of thing. But with the permit expiring, we need to get it extended so we can complete that work. So that's from my standpoint.
Yep.
I don't know if Chris Pryor is on the line. He can speak a little bit more to the work that's been done with the invasive species.
I am here. My name is Chris Pryor. I'm at 126 Cherry Street in Newton, Massachusetts. I am a relatively new member of the club the past couple of years, but I am on the forestry committee and was tasked with some of the invasive removal work here around the dam and largely, on the property in general. So this past, spring, summer, and fall, we've worked a couple of times on removing the invasives right around this dam with a couple of work parties, and then a couple of other times where it's just me and my kid out there pulling or cutting invasives. And most of the invasives have been removed on the dam and downstream, about 50 feet downstream. There's a couple patches of multiflora rose left over that we still need to get back and cut out. I waited till kind of the leaves were off. They were easier to see in there and what to cut and what not to cut. And that's the work we've been done. There's plenty of other invasives on the property, as there is most places in Eastern Massachusetts anymore. So there's a lot more work to do, but in terms of this dam project, I feel there's probably another work day left to get the invasives removed on the dam side or the downstream side of the dam here.
So, and we do need to have reports of the work that has been done. If you can
Okay.
submit those, we did get something, it was a while ago now, so somebody should be submitting, a written narrative.
Okay.
That's part of the permit requirements.
Sure.
And, just to be sure that when you're cutting, that there's also removal of the root system as well, because cutting will not be successful in invasives removal. So, and we do have weed wrenches if multiflora, we find it most effective to cut it and then use the weed wrench to pull it out. So if that's something that would be useful, just reach out and you can sign one out. We have all
Great.
sizes.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update, Chris.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. All right. And Heather, what's the term of the extension you're looking for?
So, from with the input I've received from the Concord Run Gun Club, the hope is to try to do the road and the bridge work next summer. So as long as, that is able to be complete, I think just another year should be sufficient at this point.
Okay. All right. That's what we'll shoot for. You all set, Heather, with the overview?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you all set? Are you done with the overview of the project?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any comments from the commissioners on this?
No, looks like a good project to finish up. Happy to
Yeah,
give a one
yeah.
extension.
Good progress.
Yep.
All right, any public comment? Not seeing any? All right. So if we could get a motion, Gary, for a 1-year extension?
I move that we issue a 1-year extension for DEP file 137-1485 at 74 Strawberry Hill Road.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. And the vote, Gary?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you, Heather and Chris. Good luck with wrapping up the project.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
All right.
Take care. Have a
Take
good.
care.
Thanks.
All right. So I think with that, we're moving on to the last agenda item, which is the Warner's Pond Task Force, if you will. And just to kind of tee it up a little bit, I think we have our third version of the charge on the website. We've made some adjustments as we've taken public comment over the last about month and a half or so. And I think we've got a couple of, at least in terms of, I believe we're fairly comfortable with the text, if you will. And I think we've made some changes to the membership a little bit, both in terms of the set 11 as well as some ex officio from the last meeting. So certainly want to see what the commissioners think about that. And I think just to note, we were also thinking that with the change of the indigenous group to ex officio, we were holding perhaps a Concord Land Conservation Trust representative.
Mhm.
My understanding, Delia, though, is you've talked to the Conservation Trust.
Mhm.
They want to discuss it at their next board meeting, I believe, which is early January.
Mhm.
And we should be hearing back from them if they would like to participate.
Right.
On this task force, if you will.
Mhm.
7th or 8th of January, thereabouts.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was, looking at the historical commission member. I guess my question just for the commission itself and others is that the right person? Because my understanding is, Delia, on the ex officio side, right? You've
Mhm.
got Ann Clifford, who's the senior planner in town,
Yep.
who I understand has a wealth of historical information about the town, and
Right.
she's willing to participate as required.
Right.
And so, question, maybe that might become, I know we've gotten some public comment regarding the West Concord Advisory Committee to be on the commission too. And so that might be a potential substitution as well.
Mhm.
So just throwing those couple of things out there for discussion purposes. So,
Did you mean that Anne would represent the historical commission, or
No.
she'll just be bringing her expertise?
yes, as an ex
Yeah.
officio expertise. Thank you, Sarah, for that clarification. Yeah. And so maybe there might be some movement on historic commission. Maybe that's, a West Concord advisory perhaps. And then we'll see where Concord Land Trust comes out in their early January meeting. So just a couple of moving pieces here, if you will. So any thoughts from Gary, Nick, Sarah on that?
Not me, no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to pontificate. I guess,
Please.
My interest in the historical commission is we've heard a lot from folks in West Concord talking a lot about the history of the site. So, there's the history of the Warner Pail factory, there's the history of the, historical uses of Warner's Pond. So I want to make sure that we have the historical interests represented. Whether that's through the historical commission or through the planner, my view is that the planner is to be representing the planning interests. If she is I don't know that we've identified individuals for any of these roles. When I look at a charge, I just want to make sure all the interests are represented in the charge. And so I don't know who the planner is going to be. I don't know that we know that for certain, but I do want to make sure that historical interests. What's that?
I'm sorry, Gary. It would be Ann Clifford, and she is the liaison with the Historical Commission, with HDC, and her background is in historical preservation.
That's great. As I'm saying, when reflecting on the charge, my interest is that the charge is going to reflect that the historical interests are represented. So that is my interest there. The other comment that I would have, just in terms of pontificating for everybody to think about, is, the West Concord Advisory Committee. I'm a big supporter of the West Concord Advisory Committee. I was on the West Concord Task Force. I was the inaugural chair of the West Concord Advisory Committee, served 2 terms on the West Concord Advisory Committee. I think I wrote the charge for the West Concord Advisory Committee. So I'm very well aware that it was established beyond the purview of the planning board, which has a very specific interest and function for the town of Concord, the planning department, the planning board, as well as planning staff. The West Concord Advisory Committee is unique, right? It was established to have an active focus on West Concord, which is different than the mandate and purview of the planning board. Similarly, and this is, my view of the Friends of Warner's Pond has essentially downscaled that very same purpose and activity to the Warner's Pond. They keep an active focus on the interests of Warner's Pond. So to me, just like I don't think we would need a member of the West Concord Advisory Committee and a member of the Planning Board, I don't see that we need a member of the Friends of Warner's Pond and the West Concord Advisory Committee and the Planning Board. To me, they're serving the same function. The Friends of Warner's Pond is serving the role, the interest of keeping an active focus on Warner's Pond. As long as we have the interests of all of these different constituencies represented, I'm very happy to play around with the charge however members would like. But I really think it's important that we have somebody who's representing Warner's Pond. I think it's really important that we have somebody who's representing historical interests. I think it's really important that we have somebody representing recreational interests and so on. So
Sure.
I'm very happy with the composition we have now, but I guess we'll wait and see what the the land trust
Right.
says. I think having a land trust representative also, there have been a lot of concerns raised about what is going to be the fate of the land afterward. So I think having somebody from the land trust who's looking at land ownership interests of conservation land also could be valuable. But anyway, those are my thoughts, just pontification, and happy to hear
Appreciate
what
it.
Nick and
Yep.
Sarah.
Nick, Sarah, any perspective on from your end?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Sarah, anything on your end?
Yeah, would you mind just putting up the list again, please?
So number 10 is.
I guess just listening to the comments that Gary made. Could you please scroll a bit so I can see down below where the senior, yeah, so it seems to me then that do we need a senior planner if somebody else is representing historical, I guess. But that was your question earlier, I think, do we need both?
Correct. Again, the question is, whoever's appointed by a historical commission, are they going to be as knowledgeable as Ann Clifford, if you will, as senior planner?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think we're just trying to bring the best historical perspective to the discussion. That's all, right? It's not meant to cut anybody out or it just,
and a planner
Gary's
would be,
point.
but a planner would be non-voting, whereas but if the historical piece is, which obviously is very important, shouldn't they be voting? I guess that's what I'm thinking.
They would be as this
If-
historical.
You're right,
commission
Sarah. That's a fair perspective too. If the historical commission member stays there,
Mhm.
they would certainly have that voting perspective or that voting right.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's a fair perspective as well.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we can hold and see how the trust comes out.
Mhm.
And to Gary's point or concern about, we have Warner's Pond task, the Friends of Warner's Pond focused on the issue specifically to Warner's Pond. If we wanted to keep the historical commission, but the land trust defers,
Mhm.
we still need a 11th member.
Right.
Right? So something to think about there.
Well, I may be over assuming here, but would an upstream abutter be a friend of Warner's Pond? I would think so.
Could be. Yeah, no, but we have specifically, number one is there's a Friends of Warren's Pond representative, then upstream and downstream of butters and so on. So you're right.
Yeah, sorry, I missed it. That was already there. Yeah, I was just wondering if you need both, but
Well,
it's
but
already
I
there.
do see them as, and as we have debated this charge, I see them as representing different interests. So again, like, I think there's 11 spots that, are representing 11 different points of view or perspectives, or they should be representing, different. The Friends of Warner's Pond is collectively representing the interests of everybody on Laws Brook, everybody on Commonwealth, everybody who is a member of that entity, Friends of Warner's Pond, and keeping an active focus on Warner's Pond. can represent people who don't live on those
Yeah.
streets.
No, I agree,
The
Gary. I'm
upstream
sorry.
abutter is,
how's that-
really representing
I
somebody.
missed that. I missed that line 1 was actually there. I thought we were discussing whether it should be there, but I see it is there, so that's fine.
I've wondered about this, but what's the distinction between an upstream abutter and a friend of Warner's Pond? Aren't their interests going to be pretty much aligned?
I mean, I don't want to name names, but like there are people who are friends of Warner's Pond who don't even live on the pond. So they don't have the same interest as somebody
Right.
who would be affected, who lives directly on, upstream and could be affected by flooding, could be affected by the loss of loss of the dam, could be affected by changes to recreational amenities in that area. I think they would have a different interest than somebody who maybe is a member of Friends of Warner's Pond who doesn't live on the pond.
Well,
So I see them as
that's
having
true that's true if that member is not living on the pond.
Yeah.
But if he is living on the pond, we have two upstream abutters. So I
That's-
mean,
That's true.
that's not a different interest. That's the same interest. So I think I'm okay with having both, having a friend, an upstream abutter and someone who's a friend of Warner's Pond, but I think they should be representing different interests.
But I think they are. I mean, I see
Potentially.
that.
If they're neighbors
Right.
next to each other as an
We don't
extreme
know yet,
example.
right?
Tell me how
Right, we
they're
don't know, I'm just saying like in designing the charge, I can see the members of Friends of Warner's Pond having an interest in a broader set of issues versus an upstream abutter who may share some of those interests, but may
Yeah.
have their own unique interests as being on the pond or.
But you're talking about a collective interest on the one hand versus an individual interest on the other.
Correct.
And I don't know how you find the person who's going to be the collective interest. I just want,
We'll see the
may not.
letters they
Right.
submit.
huh?
They'll submit letters and they'll.
Okay, well, I mean, if that's
presumably
part of the selection criteria, I'm okay with it. But, if we wind up with two people who happen to be both have property abutting the pond, I'm not going to be too happy with them.
Yeah, well, that is a possibility, right? And I don't think it's a possibility we can necessarily foresee, right?
Well, can it be a criterion for selection? That's all I'm asking.
Right, there is criteria for selection in terms of, expertise or some element of expertise they could bring to the discussion, right? That's the qualification of those letters of
Okay, so
interest.
are we saying we'd like to see different qualifications from the upstream abutter and the friend of Warner's Pond? That's the question I'm putting on the table.
Yeah,
No,
I think the way to
no.
handle Nick's request is, look at the language. We list these 11 people. Do we say why we've selected these 11 people, or we just say the task force should be composed of? Should we say something like, the 11 individuals that are representing the following interests or something, so that that's implicit in the selection criteria?
Yeah, well, we can pull that up and take a look at I think it's in the last paragraph or second to last paragraph.
Yeah.
In terms
But
of
is that what you're getting at? Nick? With representation as follows.
Yeah.
And then. Yeah, I mean, we could throw in a phrase there somewhere that says, preference will be given to Concord residents with the specific interests above and experience, knowledge, and or blah, 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 Nick, does that address your point?
I guess, I mean, it's going to feel kind of loaded in one way if we wind up with two people who are both have
Yeah,
property
no.
abutting the pond, to me.
I see what you're saying.
It's going to look like
Yeah. But I think based on the letters of intent that are submitted, we can.
Well,
Yeah,
we don't say anything here about the actual selection criteria, so I mean, as long as
Yeah,
this is taken into account.
That's what the whole
paragraph is.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can lean on this paragraph in terms of the backgrounds of the people that submit volunteer cards and,
Right.
and do our best to, assemble a board that's got that
Well,
diversity.
and to assemble a board where, we try to avoid people having identical interests, right?
Sure. Yeah,
That's what-
you
that's
don't
what
need
I'm talking about.
replication
No,
necessarily.
that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fair statement. Yeah. It's a good point. All right, and do we want to, any further discussion on these points from the commission's point of view? Because I just want to talk about a little bit of timing as well.
There are 3 raised hands.
Okay.
Let me know when you want to.
Do we want to talk a little bit about timing just to get
Yes.
that out and then people
Yep.
can,
Yep,
the comments can be, hopefully catch everything?
sounds good.
So then I think the thought was before the January 17th meeting, I think Karen might have sent this around to the commissioners, if we have a meeting on the 10th. So we will not be voting on the charge tonight. Discussion only and comment only. And the thought was, after we learned, we could hold a special NRC meeting on the 10th of January.
Mhm.
So that at that point, that would be the goal, to vote the final charge. We'll know from the Concord Land Conservation Trust of their interest in participating. And then we can make any final adjustments at that meeting and hopefully vote the charge then. As we would certainly like to seek the task force by the 17th, I think is the goal.
Mhm.
Is that the idea for the first meeting, Delia?
Yes, so to have anybody who's submitting a volunteer card for the task force to have that in by
The 12th?
Friday the 12th
Okay,
At
and today
at noon.
at noon, January 12th.
Yeah.
For letters of interest in the volunteer card.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the timing we're discussing as well at that point. So that's the framework of that. All right,
Sounds good.
all right. All right, so public comment.
Tracy Dunn had her hand up first.
Okay, Tracy?
Hi, everybody. Tracy Dunn, 26 Lawsbrook Road. I first want to just thank you guys for doing so many revisions and taking into account the feedback that's been provided. But I think, Gary's point about the West Concord Advisory Committee and Friends of Warner's Pond being redundant is one that strikes me as not true. I think the Friends of Warner's Pond has been very focused on Warner's Pond, but the hope is that the West Concord Advisory Committee has the larger perspective of all the changes that are upcoming for West Concord and how Warner's Pond fits into larger issues that we're all facing in this community. So I'm not sure Friends of Warner's Pond has been able to follow all of that as much as the West Concord Advisory Committee.
Okay. Appreciate that comment. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Anna?
Hi,
Anna?
Anna Feldwig, 343 Commonwealth Avenue. I
Good
wondered
evening.
about upstream of Butter, being somebody from the prison. Just because they own land along there, they have a long history with the pond. We have no idea what they think of any of this. I don't think anyone has talked to them at any point. And we also had ideas in the past about putting some of the dredgings from the bottom of the pond on prison land. So I wonder if it would be useful to have them.
Well, I can't speak to that. Obviously, we don't know their time commitments and stuff. We could certainly invite them to be an ex officio. I think that would be a better place for them because I'm not sure they want to stay, for all the discussion points necessarily, but I know Delia, you've talked to them on and off over the years anyway, so. But I think it's a point well taken. We certainly would probably want to see if they'd want to take a position as an ex officio for those very pointed discussions on dredging, et cetera.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All set? Thanks for the comment.
Alyssa?
Alyssa Brown, 5 Concord Green. I was just thinking logistically, as Nick was asking his question about membership. I know when you supply a volunteer card, you say which committee you're interested in, but you don't necessarily say this perspective you're coming from. And so I was just wondering how you're going to differentiate someone, a friend of White Pond, from a necessarily upstream abutter.
So that's a good question, and we're hopeful that when people submit letters of interest, and we've received about 9, yeah, 8 or 9. Most people have indicated their preference or, how they would like to be identified. Some people have put more than one category down. And some have not put any down. So I think 1 or 2 have not put any down. But we're also, in addition to the volunteer card, seeking letters of interest. So if people don't submit that letter of interest, the town clerk's office is reaching back out and saying, please provide that, and, giving the guidance that this is the charge here. And I think, if we don't have that clear category identified, that we should be reaching out and asking, which category, I mean, obviously, Public Works and Recreation Commission and Select Board, and those are obvious where they're coming from. But I think that's a good point to just make sure that we're having people self-identify for their category of interest.
Yeah, fair point.
All right. Yeah, thank you. That's fine.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Michael?
Hi, Michael Sullivan. I'm at 42 Losbrook Road, so I'm an upstream abutter. I just wanted to react to the conversation about the difference between upstream abutters and Friends of Warner Pond. I agree with Gary on this. I think there are a great deal of different interests, and just because both may or may not be in favor of keeping the dam, I don't think you can narrow down to one group like Friends of Warner Pond and consider that you've taken care of the interests of all of the upstream abutters. So I'd strongly advocate for both. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments?
I don't see any other comments, and there's no other hands raised.
Okay. Commission good for the evening?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I think with that, we will, Gary?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard you. All right,
So,
Please.
we will reconvene on January 10th
yes,
to solely discuss
Warner's
and finalize the Warner's Pond Task
Task Force, that is correct.
Okay, and if anybody on the call is interested in submitting a green card or a volunteer card, please, that's on the town website. Just be sure that you also do submit a letter of interest with your category identified.
All right,
Julia, will
thank
you send out some email or notification from what we hear back from the Concord Land Trust before the?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, they meet on the 8th, and so I'll send something out on the 9th.
Okay.
And, if there's revisions to the charge based on that, I'll post those. And I'll just point out very quickly that I had a misspelling on the task force membership for the Hassanabisco. So I've corrected that spelling error, and that's the only change between what you have seen and this version. So I don't,
So once you hear from the Concord Land Trust.
yes, I'll repost it with a
repost it
version
on
4.
say the 9th, if you will. So
Yes. Yeah.
public and the commission can look at it.
Yep.
Okay,
Will do.
thank you, guys. With that, we're adjourned.
Yeah. Have a good night.